The archipelagic nation of the Philippines, with its more than 7,000 islands and over 100 distinct ethno-linguistic groups, is a remarkable blend of diverse peoples, cultures, and histories. For centuries, scholars have traced the Filipino identity through migrations, colonial encounters, and trade routes. However, a deeper and far more ancient narrative is now being reconsidered by biblical scholars and cultural historians alike. Is there a biblical origin to the Filipino people? This question invites us to look not merely at recorded history, but at sacred texts, oral traditions, genetic data, and cultural patterns. According to a growing number of interpretations, the roots of the Filipino people may trace all the way back to Noah's sons Japheth and Ham, whose descendants repopulated the earth after the Great Flood. This in-depth exploration will examine these potential biblical links, weaving together scripture, history, anthropology, linguistics, and theology, to better understand what it might mean if the Filipinos are indeed a hidden people of promise. Chapter 1. The Sons of Noah and the Table of Nations. In the book of Genesis, following the global deluge, Noah's three sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, became the patriarchs of the peoples who would inhabit the earth. Genesis chapter 10, often referred to as the Table of Nations, describes how their descendants spread out and formed various tribes and regions. Shem is typically associated with Semitic peoples, Hebrews, Arabs, and Assyrians. Ham is connected to African peoples and some populations in the southern parts of Asia. Japheth is believed to have fathered Indo-European and some Asian lineages. Among Japheth's sons, Gomer is listed, and Gomer's son is Togarmah. The sons of Gomer, Ashkenaz, Riphath, and Togarmah. Genesis 10:3. This name Togarmah becomes central to our investigation. Some theologians and ethnographers suggest that Togarmah's descendants traveled eastward, potentially becoming progenitors of various Central and East Asian groups, including those who would eventually settle the islands of the Pacific. Could Togarmah then be a distant ancestor of the Austronesian peoples, including the Filipinos? Chapter 2. Who was Togarmah? Togarmah, though mentioned briefly in the Bible, holds an important place in post-biblical Jewish and Christian traditions. Ancient Jewish texts, such as those by Flavius Josephus, mention Togarmah as the father of tribes that settled in areas north of Israel, including parts of Anatolia and Central Asia. Armenian tradition claims descent from Togarmah. The idea that Togarmah's descendants spread eastward into Central Asia and eventually beyond is not as far-fetched as it might seem. Consider the waves of migration that anthropologists have documented across Asia and into the Pacific, especially the Austronesian expansion that began over 5,000 years ago from Taiwan and swept into the Philippines, Indonesia, and as far as Polynesia. In this view, Filipinos may represent a convergence of ancient Eastern movements rooted in biblical ancestry. Chapter 3. The Austronesian Link and the Tower of Babel. The Austronesian peoples are a linguistic and cultural group whose reach extends from Madagascar to Easter Island. The languages they speak share a common ancestor and include Tagalog, Cebuano, Ilocano, and many others spoken across the Philippines. According to Genesis 11, the Tower of Babel incident led to the scattering of people and the diversification of languages. This aligns with the Austronesian dispersal, which resulted in related languages being spread across thousands of miles of ocean. If the early Austronesians were part of the scattered descendants of Japheth, their arrival in the Philippines can be seen not just as a random migration, but as part of a divine orchestration of peoples and tongues. Chapter 4. The Negritos and the Line of Ham. The Negritos are among the earliest known inhabitants of the Philippines, arriving tens of thousands of years ago. They exhibit phenotypic traits such as dark skin, curly hair, and short stature traits historically associated with Ham's descendants in biblical tradition. While modern genetics avoids such simplistic racial categories, biblical interpreters have long linked Ham's lineage to early African and Southern Asian populations. The Negritos' presence in the Philippines may thus reflect an ancient Hamitic heritage, making the Filipino genetic makeup a fusion of Japhethic migrants and Hamitic natives. This spiritual and genetic intertwining speaks to a deeper truth, that the Filipino people are a living convergence of biblical bloodlines. Chapter 5. Oral Traditions in the Great Flood. Across the archipelago, various indigenous groups preserve flood narratives eerily similar to the account of Noah's Ark. The Ifugao of the Cordillera tell of a great flood that wiped out humanity, leaving only one man with seeds. The Tagbanwa of Palawan describe a sky deity who sent a deluge to cleanse the earth. These stories may be remnants of a shared ancestral memory that links back to the great flood of Genesis 6:9. Such parallels offer more than mere coincidence. They may indicate that the biblical flood narrative lives on in encoded cultural memory among Filipinos. Chapter 6: The Symbolism of the Islands. The Philippines' geography is deeply symbolic. A nation of over 7,600 islands, it appears like a string of pearls scattered across the Pacific, hidden, humble, yet radiant. In biblical imagery, islands often represent places set apart, often preserved for divine purposes. He will raise a banner for the nations and gather the exiles of Israel. He will assemble the scattered people of Judah from the four quarters of the earth, from the islands of the sea. Isaiah 11:12. Could it be that the Philippines, while not named directly in Scripture, is one of these islands of the sea preserved and set apart for a future purpose? Chapter 7: Colonial Echoes and Prophetic Survival. The arrival of Spanish colonizers in 1521 marked a new chapter in the Filipino story. With conquest came Christianity, particularly Roman Catholicism. While much of it was enforced through colonial systems, something unexpected happened. Filipinos embraced the faith, not just as a religion, but as a spiritual identity. Today, the Philippines is the largest Christian nation in Asia, with over 80% identifying as Catholic and millions more as Protestants and evangelicals. Could this widespread faithfulness be seen as a sign of prophetic preservation? A remnant of peoples chosen to carry the light, even in obscurity? Chapter 8: The Language of the Spirit. Filipinos are known for code switching, blending Tagalog, English, Spanish, and dozens of local dialects in everyday speech. This linguistic adaptability mirrors the spirit of Pentecost, when the apostles spoke in many tongues, so that all could understand the gospel. Acts 2. This ability to embrace and embody multiple voices may reflect a spiritual gifting, a people prepared to communicate across barriers, bridge cultures, and carry messages of truth. Chapter 9: The Hidden People of Promise. While Filipinos are never mentioned by name in the Bible, neither were many other nations that later played a significant role in world history. What if the Filipino people represent a hidden people, one set apart for a future season? In prophetic literature, God often preserves a remnant. Though the number of the Israelites be like the sand by the sea, only the remnant will be saved. Romans 9:27. In the same way, Filipinos scattered globally as overseas workers, migrants, and missionaries may serve as light bearers in dark places. Chapter 10: Genetics and Divine Design. According to a 2016 National Geographic study, the Filipino genome contains 53% Southeast Asian and Oceanian, 36% East Asian, 5% Southern European, 3% South Asian, 2% Native American, linked to Spanish colonies in the Americas. Rather than random, this diversity may reflect a divinely orchestrated fusion, a people designed to be resilient, adaptable, and spiritually rich. Chapter 11: Dual Legacy, Blood, and Spirit. The union of Japhethic and Hamitic lineages within the Filipino body is more than biological. It represents a dual legacy: the strength and survival of Ham's descendants, the culture, order, and communication of Japheth's line. Together, they form a people capable of bearing burdens and proclaiming hope, embodying both the suffering servant and the radiant messenger. Chapter 12: End-Time Echoes. Revelation speaks of a time when every tribe, tongue, and nation will worship before the Lamb. After this I looked, and there before me was a great multitude that no one could count, from every nation, tribe, people, and language. Revelation 7:9. Surely among that multitude will be the Filipinos, not because of military might or political power, but because of enduring faith and quiet perseverance. Chapter 13: A People Between Waters. Geographically, the Philippines lies between East and West, between China and the Americas, between Islam and Christianity, between past and future. Spiritually, they also stand in the middle ground. A people that has suffered much, adapted often, but held tightly to faith. This positioning may not be accidental. It could be strategic in the divine story, placing Filipinos at the crossroads of history and destiny. Chapter 14: The Lightkeepers. Despite colonial trauma, economic hardship, and political instability, the Filipino spirit endures. Overseas Filipino workers, OFWs, are known not only for their skill, but for their kindness, hospitality, and quiet faith. They are missionaries in disguise, light carriers in hospitals, schools, homes, and offices around the world. The world may see them as laborers, but heaven may see them as lamps in the dark. Chapter 15, Conclusion. From the Ark to the Archipelago. If the interpretations explored in this work are true, then the Filipino people are not merely a product of colonial history or economic migration. They are a people of prophecy, born of ancient bloodlines, hidden in the islands and revealed in the fullness of time. From the Ark of Noah to the shores of Luzon and Mindanao, their journey has been long, humble, and holy. Perhaps in the great unfolding of God's plan, the islands of the Philippines are not the end of the world, but the edge of a new beginning. The story of the Filipino people is not just one of survival, it is one of divine continuity. In their veins flows the memory of ancient patriarchs. In their hearts, the echo of distant covenants. In their footsteps, the imprint of those who walked out of Babel, crossed seas, and settled under tropical skies. Whether named in scripture or veiled in mystery, the Filipino people carry with them the scent of sacred history and the strength of a people never truly lost, only hidden for a time. Their culture, forged by fire and storm, is a beacon to a fractured world. Their voices, blending old hymns, island chants, and gospel truths, form a harmony that transcends borders. In a world searching for hope, perhaps it is to these islands, scattered like stars across the Pacific, that the world must look again. Not to find power or wealth, but to witness a people preserved by grace, rooted in promise and destined for light. From Eden to the islands, the journey was never an accident. It was a design, a declaration, a destiny.